Welcome back, Leominsterites. Thank you for joining me again for representing Leominster. I am your state representative, Natalie Higgins, and I am excited to be joined with my next door colleague, Representative Stephen Hay from Fitchburg, and we're going to be joined later by City Councilor Mark Bedanza to talk about a new book. So stay tuned, and I am really excited to talk to both of these guys. They've been members of our community and our political community for a really long time. So Representative Hay, thank you for making the trek over to Leominster. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you, and thank you for having me.
So typically we talk about kind of how did you get involved in local politics? You were on the city council for quite a while before you shifted.
I was on the Fitchburg City Council for 18 years before I moved over to state representative. I guess where my activism comes from, my mother was very active with the Fitchburg Democratic Committee for years. So you grew up in that environment and paying attention. She worked for, she was a congressional aide. So you had that whole environment. And when I moved back to Fitchburg after graduate school, actually FATV was just starting to show the Fitchburg City Council meetings, and I watched those and disagreed with some of the stuff that was going on, and thought, my wife said, well, if you're going to disagree, you need to do something. So I ran for Ward 5 councilor.
Awesome. And what made you decide to shoot for the transition to state representative?
Our state representative, Natalie, was running for mayor, and when he got elected mayor, the seat was open. And I thought it'd be an interesting opportunity and a time to do something a little bit more and on a bigger scale, and that's been the truth.
And how has it been different being state representative to city council?
Probably the biggest difference is that with the city council you have 11 members, and you know everybody, and I think you can really move things more effectively on a personal level than at the state house with 160 representatives. It's a little bit harder, and the city government tends to have more open debate and more discussion. Whereas at the State House, a lot of it's open debate. It's done in committees as opposed to in informal session. So that is a difference.
And you came in a special. I won in a regular general election. So what was it like coming in? You came in right into the budget process.
I came in a special. Was elected on March 1st. Sworn in on March 9th, and budget started 2 weeks later. It was pretty overwhelming. When you're talking about then it was a $39.4 billion budget. Lots of numbers, lots of line items that you have to sift through and go through. I was very fortunate. My first attempt, I put in 5 amendments and got some funding in 4 of them. Got some overtime for the Fitchburg Police Department, got some money for the on-site academy in Westminster that deals with first responders who have trauma. Got some early education funding, which is important. So I thought I did very well for the first time out.
And how was it with this last budget process? Did you feel having one under your belt was helpful?
Oh yeah. You know the process. You know how to do your amendments. You know how to go for your meeting with the chair of Ways and Means. It's interesting. Everybody goes in with the chair of Ways and Means, and lots of people go in. They have specific little things that they're concerned about, and I understand that, and I had my list. But more important for me is that I wanted to make sure that Chapter 70 money and Chapter 90 money was going to stay. At worst, stay level funded, but hopefully have an increase, and both of those did. So that's important.
Yeah, when I went into the budget, I kind of did the top level. How can I connect these big picture issues like public higher education affordability, food security, and then some local issues. And I was really happy to partner with you and the rest of the North Central Mass delegation to get that money restored that was cut from the Johnny Appleseed Trail Association. And that was a really great way that we could show how the North Central Mass delegation can work together and get things done.
Absolutely. But when you talk about funding, you and I yesterday sat on a higher education committee and listened to a whole bunch. There were 49 bills, and a majority of them had to do with trying to find ways to make higher education accessible for people of low income, and that is a great thing, and I'll advocate for it and work for it, but we have to find the money to fund it. It all comes down to the dollars in the budget.
Right, and it wasn't too long ago, we talked about this through the hearings, it wasn't that long ago that we had nearly free, definitely debt-free public higher education in Massachusetts, and it's only within the last couple of decades that it's really fallen out for low-income working-class families. So I'm excited to see how that is going to play out in the committee, and excited to be with you on that. What other bills are you excited about working? I saw you have a new one that you filed around secret compartments.
Yes, actually, it's already gotten to third reading. It's gotten through committee.
Really?
Which is pretty exciting. Now you're in third reading. That's the home stretch and trying to get it through.
I've got one in third reading right now that we're about to get out.
It's outlawing secret compartments in cars, things that are put in after manufacturers by chop shops to hide drugs and money in firearms. I did have some input from folks after the bill went in, so we have modified it. We're going to be taking out, there was a mandatory sentencing thing that some folks had some concerns with, so that's going to be removed. We're looking to put in something that they have in Ohio to protect the legal gun owners who have license to carry, so that they can have their guns in their cars. Originally, the bill we thought covered it because it talked about intent and it talked about some other things, but some of the gun owners actually have manufactured compartments that they put in special so people can't find their guns. We want to make sure that they're protected. But I think it's important, particularly with the opioid crisis, that we do everything we can to assist the police departments in stopping drugs from being transported.
Well, and I think that this is a great illustration of the ways that the committee process and getting advocates' input kind of amends the bill, as it makes the bills never look the same as when they start.
One of my things is I hear people say, as soon as they hear something, they just go off the walls in opposition. And I say, this is process. That's part of the process. You're going off the wall is really part of the process because I'm listening, committee members are listening, and then we make adjustments to the bill and wait till it finally comes out and it gets voted on, and then express an opinion of whether it's good or bad. You know, I've for 18 years had what I've called the 3 C's, and my boys, if they hear it one more time, they'll probably strangle me, is communication, cooperation, and compromise. And that's what you have to do with legislation.
Yeah, no, that is a great rule to live by. So has there been anything that surprised you since you've become state representative? Have you learned anything new about Fitchburg? I think you knew Fitchburg pretty well, but is there anything that is new for you?
I think that the things you learn have to do with the individual agencies or departments in the day-to-day operations that you're not always aware of. And that leads to one of the things that I do every time I talk with either a human service agency or a department within the city of Fitchburg or any group. I make sure that they understand that it's not my responsibility to determine what's in their best interest. It's their responsibility to determine what's in their best interest. Tell me that, and then my job is to go to Boston and advocate for that.
Which is a great message. As someone who was an advocate on the nonprofit side, those are the partners we wanted to work with.
Absolutely.
Folks who are willing to work together to find policies.
And I think I've established very, very good relationships with lots of different agencies and departments within the city. They feel comfortable calling me, saying, hey, this bill's here, are you aware of that? This is how this affects us. Because you don't always understand all the effect that everything has on everybody. So when you get that input, that's real good.
Yeah. So do you have any exciting events coming up in your district this summer? What's next on deck for you?
Actually, right now it seems to be winding down a little bit. I will continue to have committee meetings in town and have to go in and do those types of things. I'm waiting till the fall because everybody is, on vacation and all of this going off with the kids being out of school. Probably in the middle of September, I'm going to have a conversations with the rep type thing and invite anybody in to someplace at Fitchburg State or at the library or wherever. I had one when
I'm on the
marijuana policy committee, and I held one of those, and I thought that was very informative, and it was a good opportunity for me to hear what people had to say and what their thoughts are and what's important to them. So I'll try to do those quarterly and get input from them.
Awesome. So you're on the marijuana committee, you're on higher education. What other committees are you on?
I have higher education, marijuana policy, municipal government, municipal and regional government, and economic development and emerging technologies, which is, for me, real important because Fitchburg, economic development is the core of the city growing and moving forward, and emerging technologies really are very important part of economic development in today's world.
Are we seeing a lot of things around green jobs? Like what kind of emerging technologies are we talking about?
We can talk about green jobs, but you can talk about things as simple as in Fitchburg, we do not have broadband on Main Street and on Airport Road. And you need that. If you're going to bring companies and businesses into those communities,
Absolutely.
they need to have that type of access. So we're working on those types of things.
Awesome.
I think Jay Ashen Communities Development Group is wonderful to work with, and he did a training on manufacturing that I went to, and I'm getting him to do that with the Economic Development Director in Fitchburg and her staff to try to, educate people what it is that you need to do in order to encourage economic development and companies to come to your town. I mean, I'm working with Mount Wachusett Community College and Monty Tech. Both of them, I'm encouraged, saying we want to gear our curriculum towards jobs that are going to be required from the companies in town in the next 10 or 15 years. Instead of just doing their curriculum and saying, here's what our kids do. No, it's what do the companies need?
Right.
And they want to try to fill those needs, and I think that's very productive and good.
That's great. Those seem like really great committees, particularly the emerging technologies, working together with municipalities.
Please.
How can you really
Yep.
look at all of those issues from every side? One of the last things that we always talk about, representing Leominster, one of the goals I had was how to help my community members understand that we're just community members. Please reach out to us, build relationships with us. The only way that we're going to be able to do our job effectively is if we're hearing from our community members. So what are some tips you might have for folks on how to better advocate?
978-235-1968. That's my cell phone number. It's on all my cards. It's the best way for people to get in touch with me. Yes, I have a district office in Fitchburg, which has telephones, and yes, I have a State House office in Boston, which has telephones. But if you call those and you don't get a response or something falls through the cracks, do not hesitate to contact me through email or text or on my cell phone. It's important for people to know that we're accessible, we're available, and we want to advocate for them, but we need to have that communication.
When I had Representative Kim Ferguson on, she talked a lot about just the hard part of scheduling between being in the district, being in Boston. We're hopping around, we're meeting with lots of folks. How do we make sure that we're in contact with our community all the time? That was what I give out my cell phone all the time because it's so much easier.
Just the other day, 2 people told me they called the district office and hadn't got a response. So I spoke to my aide, and my aide called into the phone and found out there was a phone problem. The message machine wasn't picking up. It was going to some other department in the city of Fitchburg. So now I've got these people thinking, they're not responding to the phone calls.
Right.
So I told her, you got a list? She said, yeah, there were 6 of them. I said, you're writing to all 6 of them saying this was the issue, this was the problem, our apologies. Please call this number and get in touch with us.
We went through that when we set up our district office. We had a number at first that didn't work, so some people got the old number. Now we have a new number. It's hard. Technology makes it a lot easier for us to work from Leominster to Boston, for my aide to be in Leominster while I'm in Boston, and we work together at the same time. Technology can get in the way.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Representative, I'm so thankful for you to join me. I am so thrilled to be able to work with you.
Delighted to work with you and work with Rep. Naughton and Rep. Benson and Rep. Zlotnick as a North Worcester County delegation. I think it's great that we're all communicating and working together because it's not one city or town. It's a whole group of towns that we need to
And there's power.
advocate
There's
for.
power in numbers. We're experiencing a lot of the same things up in
absolutely.
North Central Mass, and we need to be able to make sure people know we're out here and we're important.
Absolutely.
And we have needs.
So getting the opportunity to come on here and show people that you and I work together and have the same issues, not exact same issues, but same things that go on in our districts, and that we'll work together to try to do the best we can by the residents.
Yeah. So we're going to take a quick break and come back with City Councilor Mark Bedanza. Stay tuned. Welcome back. I'm really thrilled to be joined by my city councilor, Mark Bedanza, because I actually live in Ward 4.
I'm glad to have you as a constituent.
So one of the questions I want to get out of the way first, I know you want to talk about one of the new books you're working on, but just you're on the city council. What made you want to join? We're trying to help people connect and understand their local elected officials better.
My first taste of local politics really occurred when I helped Steve Perla run for mayor back in 1987. And a ways into his administration, he asked me to take over the city solicitor's job, which I did for about 3 years. So I got a pretty good taste of local politics back in those days, and then really was out of it for a long time. And Bob Savatelli, back in 2013, asked me to run for a position that he was going to vacate, Ward 4, as he was running for councilor at large, and my first reaction was, why would I do that? But I thought about it, and then about a month later, I said, Bob, I think I'll try it. And I did, and I'm not sorry. I've actually enjoyed it. It can be frustrating sometimes, as I'm sure you're aware.
Yes.
But it does feel good to get some things accomplished and to help people, and local politics is really that. It's really constituent oriented. Sometimes it's as simple as getting people's potholes filled and
Right.
getting other little things taken care of that are important to people, and it's good to be able to help them out.
And for folks who have an issue and want to advocate for themselves to the city council, what is the best way for them to do that?
Call my office, which is listed. I'm a lawyer in Leominster, and it's 840-500, or they can call my cell phone, which is 978-230-1128.
Okay, great. And so you're working on a new book. I caught
I
a
am.
little bit of it when you sat down.
Yeah, it's funny because the guy that I'm writing about, it's just like a lot of my books, it was just an opportunity that presented itself. He's a state senator in New Hampshire, and he's been in the Senate for 20 years now. He's running for the 11th time. He's the longest serving state senator in New Hampshire, and his district is a portion of 4 wards of Manchester and the town of Goffstown.
Okay.
And it's a very democratic portion of the state. And, it became known at some point back years ago that if you are a Democrat and you're running for president, the New Hampshire primary, of course, is of utmost importance to win, to get a good start in the primary season. And if you want to win the New Hampshire primary, you really need Lou D'Alessandro's support. And back in 2003, a reporter for the Washington Post named Mark Leibovich wrote a story about this that's been repeated in newspapers all over the world, for years now. And every Democrat that runs for president gets in touch with Lou D'Alessandro, and he's gone door to door with all of them. I mean, he's had Al Gore sleep at his house. He's had Joe Biden sleep at his house. Hillary Clinton went to a party last summer with 300 people in his front yard and the Secret Service and all the rest of it. And the interesting thing about it is being a state senator in New Hampshire is not exactly like being a city councilor in Leominster, but it is very constituent oriented. It's a citizen legislature. And it's a relatively small state, and it's very different from being in the Senate here. So it's been a fascinating examination of, this guy has done so many things in his life. And he's just a tremendous guy, and it's been a tremendous opportunity to write this book.
So what part of the story are you hoping to tell? Like how does it compare to Massachusetts? It's interesting being neighbors, but we have very different legislatures.
A lot of times when I write a book, I don't come up with the title until very late in the process. And we started talking about that one day, and then I was reflecting on it, and I said, Mike Barnacle did a great article about Lou D'Alessandro for the Atlantic, I think about 2 years ago. And it was really about his ability to relate to people. He's a great relationship guy, and that's what makes him successful. So I came up with this title of the book. It sounds a tad pretentious, but it's the Lou D'Alessandro story, and it's why every Democratic presidential hopeful should read this book. And at first glance, somebody might think, especially if they know a little bit about him, that it's the quirk in geography and timing of the primary that makes him inordinately important to the process. Because New Hampshire is the primary, the first primary in the nation, and because he has the Democratic portion of the state. But it's really not that, or at least it's more than that. It's really about his ability to relate to people. And I think we talked a lot about the last presidential election, and obviously he endorsed Hillary in New Hampshire, and he thought that she lost touch with people, and to his liking, sometimes on the national scene you get into all sorts of analytics and polls and all sorts of high-tech measurements and metrics that sometimes don't make up for just being out there and genuinely connecting with people.
Right.
And that's what this book is really about, because that's been his entire career.
Yeah.
Whether he's been a college president twice, he's been an athlete. He got a full boat to play football at Colorado.
Okay.
He's been a teacher. He's got a very fascinating career, and all of it, there's a common thread that he really relates to people very well.
And I think it's such an important piece, especially in the local politics. Like,
Yeah.
you've got to make sure that folks feel comfortable talking to you, coming to
Yeah.
you. A lot of times they're struggling with things that
Yeah.
they don't feel comfortable talking to just anyone about.
Yeah, I think a sympathetic ear, someone that truly listens, someone that is willing to consider something that they might not have thought about in the first place, an open mind,
Right.
and being fair with people. I think those qualities people recognize. I mean, I try a lot of jury cases, and juries are really good at getting it right. It's not often that I'll walk away from something and say, "Boy, that jury really blew it." I mean, they really can feel when people are being candid, when people aren't, when there's interests involved, and how those interests intersect. And I think politics is very much like that. I think people really want to know, and they don't even necessarily have to agree with your positions, but if they think you're fair and honest, I think they can support you. And I think that's important. I think sometimes on the national level, that's really hard to maintain.
Right,
You know,
right.
you've got a million people in your ear telling you what you should be doing because one metric or another is saying a certain thing, and sometimes that's counterintuitive.
Yeah. So you're connected with the Historical Society, so you know a lot about Leominster. Coming
Yeah.
into the city council, you already knew a lot of the history, but is there anything that surprised you since you've gotten involved with the city council about Leominster?
I mean, it's changing, but I think there are some themes in Leominster that, sort of started in the beginning and they're still there. I think Leominster, in some ways, is a conservative place, but not in a political conservatism. More of a, they set themselves apart from other communities or in other parts of the state. I think there's a little bit of pride in that. Leominster's a very different place, and I have a mentor who helped me with my writing career, which really started back in 2008, and Adrienne Nicola Blank. She's a Leominster resident, or native rather, and brilliant lady, and great writing career. And she also believed that. In fact, she got an editor that she was working with at the New Yorker to endorse the idea of writing an article about that. That she was going to work with me on. We still haven't done it, but she really firmly believes that it's a very unique place. And I think, looking at it historically, it goes back to day one when the city sort of split,
Right.
22 years into its founding, and the established church, started to take on Unitarianism before its time, and then they fired the reverend, and the reverend sued, recovered money from the town, set up a church that was really a Unitarian church before its time, and then they got another pastor, and that's how North Leominster was created. And so the whole community was divided from 1762 to 1788.
Yeah, no, I mean, the real exciting part of getting to represent Leominster and just the city of Leominster as state representative is getting to tell Leominster's story to folks. And even as early as when I was running, I'm reaching out to friends and professors that maybe I met in law school. They would go, "Leominster, how big is that town?"
Yeah.
There you go. No, we're the second largest city in
Yeah.
Central Mass. We're the birthplace of Johnny Appleseed, the inventors of the pink lawn flamingo. Like, we've got some history that we should be really proud of, and people should know about us.
Yeah, it's a fascinating community in many, many ways, and I obviously am sort of immersed in it, but I think back to the only history book that's been written on Leominster as a true history book, David Wilder's book, which was published in 1852. And one of the first things he says in the book is, we take pride in the fact that, or our ancestors at that time, took pride in the fact that they purchased the lands from the Native Americans, that they didn't just take it. So they have these all these different things. I mean, how they funded education, they were very proud of, because back in those days, a lot of the communities would separate their school districts, and each district would fund its school. And Leominster said, no, we're not going to do it that way, because there'll be, poorer districts and richer districts,
Right.
and it'll be unfair, and they pooled the money as a community and distributed it to the districts in proportion to the size of the district, but it all went into a central place, and that was rather unique for the times. So
Yeah, so it's nice to hear that Leominster was leading the way.
yeah,
with-
well, that's the story of James Carter. I mean, all these educational reforms that James Carter created. There's a lot of people that say, James Carter got sort of, Horace Mann ended up with all the attention, but those were all James Carter's reforms. A lot of people really say that James Carter is the one who should have been recognized for those reforms.
Yeah, that's great. So do you have any events coming up that you want to plug, that either with the Historical Society or with your books?
Yeah, I'm going to be in November. I'll make this, I'll publicize this a lot more as time goes. But I'm doing a football seminar. I'm doing 2 nights at the Leominster Public Library, starting from 7 to 9. And I'm going to do a seminar on everything about the game, from its beginnings in history to the collective bargaining agreement in the NFL, to running playbooks and NFL playbooks, how they're constructed, how plays are run, the rules of the game, how to watch the game, you name it. A little bit of local stuff. So I'm really excited about doing it, and I think I'm going to team with the Sentinel, where we're going to do pick 'em for the games between September 7th and that night, and award a couple of prizes to people who pick the most games right. So I'm looking forward to doing that project.
That's exciting.
Football's a passion of mine, and I just want to share it with people, and both in terms of some of the heritage we have locally, but broader than that. My goal is that people who have a love for the game or an interest in the game can come, and then when they go back and see their friends or their significant others, that they'll end up knowing more about the game than they did.
That's so great. Well, Counselor, thank you so much for taking
My
the
pleasure.
time to chat with me.
Thanks for having
and
me.
And before we wrap up, I just want to make sure, I'm trying to see if I can get this on the camera. So for any of you who received one of these mailers, I'm sure the City Council received one of
Yeah, I
them.
did.
I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about them. This came out from Mass Fiscal Alliance late last week, alleging that I got a 40% pay increase. I just want to set the record straight. I did not vote for, nor did I receive a 40% pay increase. But if you did receive the letter, the flyer, it opens up, please give me a call on my cell phone, 978-602-3772. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about it. And thank you so much for tuning in to this month's episode of Representing Leominster.